Nick Dogan, North State Law. We safeguard your professional license so you can get back to business. Today we're going to talk about our guide to getting your North Carolina electrical license. So with the North Carolina Board of Examiners of Electrical Contractors, they have 3 different license classifications that an electrical contractor in North Carolina can obtain, assuming they meet the certain requirements. So those 3 are your limited, your intermediate, and your unlimited. The limited one is going to have basically 2 requirements to it, or 2 limitations to it, I should say. First one being you cannot do a job in excess of $100,000. That means you cannot contract for an electrical job in excess of $100,000 with a limited electrical contractor's license. The other requirement is you cannot do any job where the voltage for the wiring would exceed 600 volts. Those are the 2 things that would prohibit you from doing an electrical job if you only had a limited license. All right, so we'll get into the requirements a little bit. The other requirements are you have to have at least 3,000 hours of electrical work under your belt. That's 3,000 hours of electrical experience. 2,000 hours of that 3,000 has to be actually on the job, like physically, directly doing some sort of wiring installation pursuant to the North Carolina or the National Electrical Code, right? So 3,000 hours of electrical experience, 2,000 hours of that has to be direct electrical work pursuant to the National Electrical Code. The next one, the one up above a limited license, is the intermediate. Now you're looking at doing jobs up to $200,000. So you're getting a little bit of an increase there. So you can't do any jobs above $200,000 if you have an intermediate license with the electrical board. There doesn't seem to be a voltage like max pursuant to the electrical board's administrative code. It's just that monetary amount. Cannot have any sort of electrical contract that exceeds the $200,000 mark. Now, as you can imagine, you're doing higher jobs monetarily wise. So with that is going to be the need for more experience, because typically with higher jobs, there's going to be more intricacies that's going to require more experience, right? So with the intermediate license, you're looking at having at least 5,750 hours of electrical experience. 5,000 hours has to be like direct hands-on installation wiring work, where you're actually hands-on doing electrical work pursuant to the National Electrical Code. You always want to be in compliance with the National Electrical Code anyways, so doing all those hours, it's going to be in compliance with the National Electrical Code if you're being trained correctly and doing things the right way. And by the way, when you take the exam, the National Electrical Code, you're going to have to know that backwards, forwards, upside down for the most part, okay? Nobody expects you to get 100%, but they're going to test you heavily on the National Electrical Code. So you're going to need to know that as you progress through your career. Now, last one is an unlimited license. And this is where the experience hours really kick up. So you need to have at least 9,000 hours of being supervised doing electrical work. 8,000 hours of that electrical work has to be like hands-on, directly doing the work yourself. Obviously, you're going to need to be supervised on every single one of these 3 classifications by a licensed electrician. But the last one, unlimited, that's where you can take any amount job. It could be 100,000, it could be 300,000, it could be $1 million, $2 million, $3 million, whatever. But you got to meet the requirements for the hourly supervision. So you got to be supervised for at least 9,000 hours. 8,000 of that has to be you actually having done the work, okay? Again, pursuant to the National Electrical Code, that type of work, all right? So since we're talking about like different classifications, different levels, I want to tell like a little bit of a story that I've noticed throughout representing people. I've had a client in the past, obviously we'll go completely unnamed, they had an intermediate license, and the job was a little bit above it. I'm not talking like hundreds of $1,000s above. I'm talking like $50,000 to $70,000 above the intermediate license, and they took it. Had a contract signed and all that stuff. So they pull the permit on that job. The planning department, or the permitting department, I should say, finds that they only had the intermediate license, and the job was for a higher amount than what they were licensed for, and my client at the time was going to be subject to heavy sanctions by the electrical board, including but not limited to suspension. The individual was already in the process of getting the unlimited license when we were heading through the disciplinary process with the board. Ended up getting the unlimited license before we got to a hearing. Had the hearing, they had the unlimited license, they corrected the deficiency from before, and we were able to get a really good result, avoid suspension and interrupting of the client's business at that time. So you got to really, really pay attention to the amount that you're contracting for a job, and don't go over it. All right. So you could contract for a job with an intermediate license for $190,000 or something along those lines, right? But say somebody's like, oh, well, yeah, I know we contract for 190, but how about we do a change order and we get, XYZ done in the bathroom, we'll get some heated floors in the bathroom. Well, heating floors, if that takes you above the $200,000 threshold for your intermediate license, guess what? You're going to be subject to the discipline with the electrical board. And if you don't have that unlimited license, you got that intermediate, you go over it, even though the contract stated previously that it was 190, you do a change order, or you don't do a change order, but you do it anyways, but there's proof that you went over the 200,000 and you did, then you're going to be subject to discipline. So you got to be really, really careful about that stuff, because at the end of the day, the board is likely to find out about it. They're going to get access to invoices. They're going to get access to receipts. So labor and materials do count. You got to make sure that you're aware of all that stuff. The other thing, and I've talked about this in another video, so check out the playlist. I've got a playlist on the YouTube channel directly for electricians and other professions. But there's a lot of talk in the electrical industry, and I know this because I've talked to a lot of electricians, that you can hire 1099 electricians as long as they're licensed. That's not exactly true. You can go through a temp agency to hire a licensed electrician as a 1099, but say you've got Acme Electrical LLC, you're the qualifier for it, you're the owner, and you want to hire some people, but you want to do it through a 1099. Even though the other electrician might be licensed, you still cannot do it unless you go through a temp agency. So check out my other video on that. I go into more detail on that on the other video. And I've got some other videos regarding supervision. Those are super helpful, because supervision, I can see coming down the pipe is going to be a big thing pretty soon. So you want to make sure that you're on your P's and Q's for that. So check out those videos. If you got any questions after checking out the blogs on my website, northstatelawfirm.com, and checking out my other YouTube videos, go ahead and text or call my office, 919-521-8810, and you can get set up with a free 15-minute discovery call with a member of my staff. I hope everybody has a fantastic day, and thanks for keeping the lights on, North Carolina. Have a good one. Bye-bye.